Welcome to another one of our weekly Instagram live sessions. I realize I'm probably a different face than you're used to seeing, so just wanted to quickly intro myself. My name's Julie. I'm the social media manager here at Bluehost, so you've probably seen some of my work, although you probably haven't seen my face before. And today we're going to be joined by Sheridan Scott, who is our CLM manager, our director here at Bluehost. Let me just pin this title, and Sheridan's asking to join. Hi, Sheridan.
Hi, how are you?
Good. Nice to see your face virtually.
I know my camera is a little off, but we'll make it
There you
work.
go.
There I am. All right, there you
You
go.
got a nice stack of books in the background.
Oh, yes, I'm surrounded by books in my house. That's just the way my life is.
Me too. Me too. So why don't you just introduce yourself and tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Sorry, my headphones are a little wonky, so let me know if I cut out at all.
You're good.
Hi, I'm Sheridan Scott. I am the CLM director for Bluehost, which means basically that I manage all communications with existing customers.
That's awesome. And so how did you get started in CLM, and what made you interested about communicating with customers?
Yeah, so out of college, I was an English major in college, and out of college, I got into publishing books, and because my first love is all forms of writing, from fiction to nonfiction. But there was a decline in the publishing industry, in the print publishing industry, so I pivoted to marketing, which actually made a lot of sense because I think of marketing and customer communications along the same lines as publishing a book. You're trying to tell people a story,
Yeah.
and you're trying to give them new perspectives, or to teach them something new, or to help them succeed and hopefully create in their own uh, on their own afterwards if you do it
Yeah.
properly. So yeah, it was a pretty seamless transition.
Yeah, that's awesome. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like growing up, publishing was one of those things I always thought of as such a cool job. So that's really cool to hear that that's how you kind of got started and made that sort of like seamless transition into marketing. So to kick off the conversation, what would you say are some general guidelines for communicating with customers, especially during a crisis like right now?
Yeah, I think we're in a very unique position right now, because each of us individuals understands on a completely personal level what everybody's going through, and we have this collective pain point, if you will, or collective experience that's happening. And while there's nuances to that across the board, people might have childcare issues or be battling with unemployment right now, or just that simple loss of connection with other people in a face-to-face basis. um, it's one of those situations that doesn't come along too often, but it's something that any small business owner, website owner, anybody can really empathize with, because we're all feeling it right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're in a singular moment. Sorry, I don't mean that. I'm just still going, um, but whenever you're thinking about communicating in times like these, I think you need to start with how you feel and build your story from that place, and really, pay attention to it. So I think it's, a very relevant point to be discussing right now.
Yeah, definitely. So, what are your thoughts on staying silent? I know a lot of people probably feel conflicted about whether they should say something. If they do say something, people are saying kind of the same things right now. So maybe they think, oh, it's probably just better for me to just stay silent and say nothing at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think both sides are understandable. It's a bit of a double-edged sword, probably, but um, you know, from my perspective and from what I've seen and my experience as a consumer as well as a marketer, is that it almost feels kind of icky to me in some ways to just completely ignore it and carry on with business as usual. Whether that's communicating with customers, which is obviously the point of this conversation. But even in a broader sense of your day-to-day interactions with people, if you're, communicating online with your coworkers or your customers, or any sort of audience, I think there is a need to acknowledge that,
Hmm.
and kind of avoid this, like, let's pretend that everything's just fine.
Right.
Um, but I also know that it can be, somewhat taxing and triggering to some people to be constantly inundated with this information. You open Facebook or you turn on the TV, and every commercial and every ad starts with
Yeah,
something about where we are right now. And
exactly.
people want to tune that out. But, I think if you do it in the proper way, um, I think it is a necessary thing to acknowledge it, definitely.
Yeah, definitely. So if people are going to acknowledge it, what are some best practices for promoting services? Because I feel like there's a fine line between, you know, wanting to, promote these sympathetic messages, but also needing to sell services or products.
Excuse me. Yeah. I think there's a lot of guidelines that you can kind of follow to do it successfully and empathetically and in a way that's not icky.
Yeah.
Icky is my favorite word. Um, and I've got some do's and don'ts that I can go over, but I
Yeah.
will say before I get into that, that I'm speaking in this conversation with my guidelines that I follow and that I recommend to people. In this instance, I'm speaking to people who are offering a product or a service to an audience. Now, if you have a personal blog that is centered on your experiences and your feelings, by all means, just disregard a lot of my don'ts here, because that's your
Right.
personal story that you're telling. And, while I do like the idea of humanizing your business and sharing, your struggles with people, there are some ways to do it that will probably be, more impactful and less triggering to the community that you're talking to. Um, I would start by saying keep it authentic, like really authentic.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, this is a completely shared experience, so you have a real opportunity here to speak to people on a very real level. And in doing so, you should also, as a do, be direct. I think one thing that I've seen that just kind of just gets on my nerves are these kind of taglines that everybody is using
Oh,
in the
yeah.
market. You see,
Yeah.
everything from "we're all in this together," or my personal favorite, "in these troubling times."
Or
Um,
these uncertain times.
Uncertain times, yes. Uncertain is such a big word that they're using right now. Two things on that. One, it really doesn't mean anything. We've heard it so many times. It doesn't, hit directly where you need it to hit. And I don't think it adds any value to your message to
Yeah.
kind of sugarcoat what's happening. And on the other hand, like I said, we've been hearing it so many times from so many different outlets that it's just becoming white noise. Like, I know
Oh,
for me
definitely.
personally, like you probably feel it too. Like if you turn on your
Yeah.
TV and there's another
Super
almost,
triggered every time I hear
it's just
it.
like every commercial. And I've gotten to the point now where I just like want to see, okay, well, how are they going to tie this back into whatever it is they're offering? Because this is going to be fun to see.
Right.
Because to be honest, a lot of, people who do have advertising budgets for television, I'm kind of underwhelmed by the connections they've been making.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that kind of and I'll get more into how you make your communications relevant to your customer base, but before I do that, while we're talking about being direct, um, and I kind of skirted the issue of making your story personal, I would call out that you need to it's a fine line that you're walking when it comes to sharing your own experiences in a business format, alongside an offer. Um, I would say don't put the burden on your audience to hear of your specific struggles.
Yeah.
Um, I would say take your struggles that you're having, because I know we're all having them, and make them come from a place of empathy for this shared experience rather than my individual experience. I would, if you come away with anything today, it's don't put the burden on your audience to give you their sympathy. It's your job as a small business owner, an online presence, a communicator. It's your job to empathize with the people you're trying to reach. right? So
Ooh, that's super important. I love that.
yeah, I mean, I think so too. You know, you're there to offer them some form of comfort, whether it's like an understanding that you see them and you see what they're going through, or that you have some sort of offer that could perhaps add a little value or make it slightly easier for them in their everyday life. So always, you know, take it in, understand it from your own personal standpoint, but put it back out to your audience, and put it as, you know, put your empathy on them.
Right.
Um, so now we get to the part of relevance, and this goes hand in hand with the, like, you know, in these uncertain times, um, I've seen these somewhat weak links from getting from, you know, we're in a global pandemic. It's, you know, stressful. It is, you know, hurting our economy. It's all these things. And so we get these blanket messages about it, and then they divert into advertisements for things that don't always line up properly. You know, like I'll
Mm-hmm.
see a message about, you know, we're all in this together. So, you know, here's a foot long Subway sandwich for you, you know, like, did not mean to call out a brand name,
That makes sense.
but yeah, but you know, it's like, um, so you really need to, when communicating with your audience, if you are, you know, trying to sell something, a service, a product, really think about the best way to link what's happening right now to your product or service. Um,
Mm,
you know, ask yourself, how does my business relate to what I'm saying about the pandemic, or how is my audience struggling right now, and how can I respond to that? What do I have to offer my audience? You know, there's obviously a lot of businesses are hurting right now, and I'm not trying to make light when I make jokes about it.
yeah.
But there's a real opportunity there, not just to, you know, offer your standard products and services to the community. And it might be that your products and services are not directly related to the pandemic, but you want to address the pandemic in some way and what people are going through. So
Right.
maybe, you know, you pivot and offer some video content on how to's. Like if you were working in a salon, maybe you show people how to do nail art online. These aren't ways to, you know, create revenue for your company at this time, but they are a way to create that customer loyalty, and to position yourself for when things do begin to turn again, and hit that uptick, which I do believe they
Yeah.
will soon. You're positioning yourself as a trusted service provider to them. Um, and then I think I have some notes here that I'm kind of going through.
You're good. I
And
was just gonna say one of my the hair salon that I go to here in Austin, they've been doing Instagram lives and Instagram stories showing people how to cut their own hair.
oh no.
So obviously not bringing them any value, especially if people actually do learn how to cut their hair correctly, which I'm sure a lot of people probably won't, but they're still offering, you know, some sort of resource and solution for their customers right now that I'm sure a lot of people appreciate. Not me, but other people.
Yeah, no, I haven't gotten to that point yet.
No, me neither. I'm
I
too
hope I
afraid.
do. But that does bring up a good point. I know that some people are concerned, like, well, what if I give away my secrets? If I'm offering people help on how to do these things themselves, um, you know, where does that leave me when this is over? And I think for the most part, you know, there's nuances to every situation, but I think for the most part, by offering this help, you're not canceling future business per se. It's, you know, it's a brand move, it's a loyalty move on your part, and it gives people the help they need when they can't access you or your services.
Right.
But I do believe that, you know, once we get to a point where people can go out more and it's safer to, you know, visit these businesses, I think people are going to rush to it to get that sense of normalcy back in their lives.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
know I myself would love to get my nails done because I
Same.
can't. I can watch all the tutorials in the world, but no, it
I
never
don't
looks
even
the same.
try. There's no point
Uh,
of trying for me.
all right. Um, but uh, uh, I just want to make sure I cover everything. I know I've been talking a lot about this, but a couple more things to add from a do's and don'ts perspective is do be tactical in your messaging, don't communicate just for the sake of communicating. I
Mm-hmm.
know as marketers or as business owners, or service providers, we all have this inherent urge to stay top of mind with our customers all the time. And yes, that is definitely important. Explore different channels to do so, whether it's in social media or if you have email addresses, email contact, that kind of thing. But do be tactical in what you're offering customers. Um, Communication is obviously important, but it does come kind of off is white noise after a while whenever you're saying the same thing over and over again. So
Yeah.
get creative and think of new ways to not only reach your customers but what you're saying to them. You know, try new things out, but don't just communicate for the sake of communicating. I think that will lead to unsubscribes or people kind of like abandoning
Right.
following you and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I
Uh,
think that's really important. I've been seeing way too much of that lately, so definitely something to focus on right now.
right, right, and it's interesting too, because the people who got the jump on communicating from kind of a lot of the larger corporations and businesses, and retail industry was a big one too. The ones who got the jump on communicating, it really was an impactful message they were sending. A certain clothing line that I absolutely love was one of the first emails I saw that said they were shutting down
Hmm.
voluntarily, and they were continuing to pay their employees. They weren't offering anything in the email other than an update on where their business was, but what they said was impactful. Unfortunately, I think a lot of companies took that, and ran with it. And
Hmm.
now, at this point, if you get emails about, what you're doing during the COVID-19 crisis, um, it might fall flat.
Yeah,
I
yeah, I
think
think that time is kind of past.
exactly, exactly. I mean, I do think it's still relevant in this time, even with, I don't know where all of our viewers are from, but for me in Texas, it's there's a huge push to get back to normal,
Right.
and so a lot of people might say that, well, is this messaging still relevant? But I think absolutely it's going to be relevant for quite a
Yeah.
while.
Oh,
Yeah,
definitely. Yeah.
yeah. And then
Well,
I
I
guess,
think those, go ahead.
oh, go ahead.
No,
Oh,
you're good. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that my last point to everybody is you're all consumers of one thing or another, just like I'm a consumer of one thing or another. So follow your gut. If you
Right.
write something or place something or post something that feels a little off to you or doesn't feel natural to you and your tone and your voice, trust yourself, question it,
Yeah.
um, and just remain authentic, and I think that's the best advice I can give you.
I think that's great advice. Yeah, that's a great way to end that part. So we're going to shift gears a little bit for the last question. So let's talk about like front of site websites. So what should people be communicating right at the front on their homepage of their website?
Oh boy, yeah. So this was a big topic of conversation in my company, even. But I think first and foremost, transparency is key. I know we are all struggling. Those of us who are working and those of us, who have side hustles or own our own businesses, everybody's struggling to keep up with the
Mhm.
changing landscape of everything. And there's a lot of tactical things that might not fall within, your routine day of work. Um, so I think setting expectations immediately, front of site, on the homepage, with your customer base or whatever audience you have, um, be transparent, give them complete visibility by setting expectations on, hey, we might be, delayed in responding to your inquiries, or, shipping is taking us a little bit longer.
Yep.
You'll find that most people are completely understanding of that. What
Right.
you don't want to happen is to not be clear on expectations, and have a transaction with a customer, only for them to find out after the transaction happens that there's going to be a delay or there's going to be an issue, um, with delivering whatever product or service, in a timely manner. I know that's
Yep.
happened to me since this started, and it feels kind of like a bait and switch, right?
Yep.
you have an expectation and it's not met. So
Mm-hmm.
better to set lower expectations and over deliver, right?
Yeah,
Um,
transparency is key either way.
exactly, exactly. And then on top of that, we kind of touched on this earlier, but I do believe um, that content is king, as you know, former content marketer.
Yep.
And I think there's an opportunity here for everybody to provide a bunch of really good information, whether it's by sharing, you know, information that will be directly impact your business, or will directly impact the type of audience person you target.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's, you know, you can create your own content. You can link to other people's content. You could create a community. You could enable your blog comments, heaven forbid, if you're brave enough to start creating more community and more interactions with people. But yeah, I think there's definitely always room for more content,
Yeah.
and you know, put whatever you have to use to help the people around you. I think that's going to be the biggest thing you can offer them.
Yeah, that's super important. Content definitely is king. I would agree with you there. We did have a question come in from
Uh,
Luke. He said, "What should we put on our homepage as a disclaimer?"
Um, I think follow the guidelines that I talked about around being direct and being authentic. You can't foresee the future. I get that, and you can't tell what each visitor's experience is going to be and what they, you know, regarding what they want and how they expect it to be delivered. But I think that your messaging should reflect any challenges that your company might face when it comes to delivering
Right.
to your audience, whatever it is you deliver to them. So whether it's, hey, um, due to, you know, COVID-19 challenges with shipping, you might see a delay in receiving your product, or due to COVID-19, I can no longer provide X, Y, and Z services at this time. Might I direct you to some tutorials on how to complete this, you know, until I
Mm-hmm.
can get back to servicing you? So,
Yeah.
you know, keep it direct, authentic, and completely clear.
Yep. Yeah, that goes back to transparency. I think those two things go pretty much hand in hand. So I think that was all that I had. Sheridan, where can people go to learn more about all the things you talked about?
Oh, glad you asked. I would happily direct you to bluehost.com, our blog. Um, we have we, as in a huge team of people, came together and created a resource center directly related to COVID-19 issues, challenges, information for small businesses specifically. But I think, you know, even if you don't have a small business, if you have a blog or just an individual with any sort of online presence,
Yeah.
there should be some helpful information there, including, you know, blogs that include some of the information we've talked about today.
Yep. And that link is in our Instagram bio if you guys want to go learn more. Thank you so much, Sheridan. I hope you guys found this helpful, and we'll see you next Tuesday for another one. Bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. See
Bye.
you later.